Hello multi-machine head manipulating musicians. That is a malt mention provided by Willem Killian. Thank you, Willem. And introducing Ralphie Review 892 here in the Bothy. And it's not any old Bothy, by the way, malt mates. Anybody that comes here is a malt mate. And you can go to many, many Bothies up and down Scotland and you won't necessarily meet any malt mates or see any malt mates. But in this Bothy, because it's the Manx Bothy, you do. It's where you find the whisky reviews. Whiskies like this. Highland Park, 10-year-old, single malt, which is a whisky that's changed rather over the years in a certain way. And I shall give you empirical evidence for this shortly. It's not just an opinion, I can provide tangible evidence. In the meantime, a unique little feature to this, I'll hold the bottle up so you can see it actually. There you go. It's got all sorts of scrolly, not worky things in the glass, which are actually, they're more Celtic than Viking, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it. I know that in the modern world, people don't mind a bit of cultural confusion. 10-year-old Highland Park, bottled at 40... Let me see, I've got it difficult to read actually. Yeah, 40%. It's called Viking Scars. Because of course, Vikings get lots of scars if you believe the docudramas that they put out on mainstream media. I think you'll find that Vikings were actually a lot more cultured in their own way. But this really doesn't get much of a say when it comes to dramatic license in the media. People normally go for the 12-year-old. That's the traditional presentation of Highland Park. The 10-year-old, as a 10-year-old, it's fairly recent. And I have to say, the first impression I got, if I was to put it in one word, from smelling and tasting this whisky, is unripe, as in unripe fruit. We'll start with the nose. It certainly smells young. It's got that spirit intensity to it. I'm not getting much in the way of comprehensive maturation that you would expect from primarily first fill ex-bourbon casks or sherry casks. It's interesting, but it's definitely, although it's 2 years younger than the 12-year-old, it feels more like 4 years. On the nose, it feels unready. On the taste, fairly superficial flavours. Raisin, phenolics, slight sort of scorched note from the phenolics. Bit of mild ginger, slight little note of barbecue roasted herbs, sage, rosemary in the background. Touch of vanilla and a fairly swift development off the arrival, leading to an even swifter finish when you taste it raw. So I'm going to add a little bit of water, because without water there really is not a lot happening here. Certainly not what you would expect from a Highland Park. The bottle, while this is opening up a little bit, because I do need to give it a few minutes, the bottle has changed somewhat over the last 20 years. Here's one of the old styles of bottlings. You can already see there's not just a superficial difference in the rebranding, it's a substantial difference. And I distinctly remember 20 years ago, this version of Highland Park, 12-year-old, was considered very reputable as a single malt. It was up there with Lagavulin and Macallan and Glenfiddich. And the reason being that it was considered the great all-rounder. And I have to say that in the old days, the majority of Highland Park bottlings really came from good casks. You could smell the good casks, you could taste the good cask, and the comprehensiveness of the maturation of this 12-year-old was absolutely excellent. Having said that, there was a suspicion that caramel was added to this. But in those days, nobody really latched on to that. It wasn't considered so important. And again, it was bottled at 40%. But that was then, and this is now. And a lot has changed. And it's not just in the presentation. When you actually go to auction and buy one of these old bottles and sit them down side by side, the old 12-year-old with the new 12-year-old. I mean, I couldn't buy a 10-year-old at auction because it didn't exist then. It was the 12-year-old, I think it was a 16 and 18. But you never really saw the 18. That was for exclusive tobacconist stroke wine merchant, spirit merchant shops. But coming back to this, the goalposts have certainly moved. It's a lighter whisky, so I reckon that if any caramel colourant has been added, there's not a lot. Having said that, there's this ongoing situation where Highland Park will not state natural colour on their label, although frankly, you could put it in there somewhere where people could see it. But if you email the distillery, they'll assure you, absolutely, we don't add caramel to our whisky. Yeah. I think the real question is, when you're emailing the distillery, is why don't you state on the label that your whisky's natural colour? Question mark. Because you can assume from that they're trying to hide something. If there's lack of transparency, then they want to have a lack of transparency. And I don't think that this situation is helping Highland Park hold on to its reputation when there are so many of the new generation full flavoured whiskies coming out, which in terms of interesting smell and taste can really take on Highland Park with ease. Adding a few milliliters of water certainly helps this. It really does. And the nose has got a little bit more spice and gingeriness to it. The phenolics are a little less simple and two-dimensional. It's starting to smell more like what you would expect to have got straight from the bottle. Taste. A lot better. Not just a bit, a lot better. I mean, it's at 40%, you're not going to add much water. But whatever little water you do add is going to make a big difference. There's more kind of baked apples coming through now, more complexity in the fruit notes. The phenolics rounded off. It's not so simple and, frankly, two-dimensional. It doesn't taste so much like an unready whisky, which, frankly, should have been bottled in 2 or 3 years' time. So adding a drop of water certainly helps, but that only goes so far. What are we going to give this for a malt mark? It's my malt mark. I will give this a perfectly respectable 81 out of 100, and that's a Ralphie malt mark for Highland Park. I understand why, to an experienced whisky drinker, the branding in the bottle is starting to look a bit kitsch and cartoonish. It It doesn't look authentically Viking. It's too complicated. But I understand why they're doing it. On brightly lit shelves in supermarkets, travel retail, and in Amazon, you really need to present your whiskey more like a gin these days. You need that extra bling to attract the eye of the consumer, who is overloaded with stimulation. And therefore any stimulation in terms of marketing presentation has to be a bit over the top. And in 5 years' time, it's going to be even more so. And in 10 years' time, at that point, it wouldn't surprise me if they're using fluorescent bottles. It's starting with gin. It's already happening out there. And they might actually put sparkles in it. Who knows? They do that with vodka and it works and it sells. See, this is the dilemma for a distillery. Which customer do you go for? If you're smart, you go for both. You have your fancy branded 40% bottle for the consumer, the very occasional, highly budget conscious buyer. And they will accept an unready, lesser version of a whiskey because frankly they don't know any better, because they don't have the comparison. You and I do. You do because you're watching my videos. You're taking that extra interest that only 1 in 100 customers do. But I tell you what, we may be the 1%, but tomorrow we'll be the 10%. And we're going to make the critical difference in hard economic times as to whether a distillery thrives or dies. Cheers, malt mates. Here's to us. If you'd like to pop back again shortly, I will be attending, presenting, informing Ralphie Review 892 Extras, in which I will tell you all about the online Scotch Whisky Awards. There you go. Now you know. See you soon.